Hello.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good afternoon. I'm sure that the room will fill up slowly.
Such a filled room.
Yes.
Right after lunch.
I can hear the crowd roaring.
Few, but they count for thousands.
It's just VIP session.
Yeah, Tiana is here, everybody's here.
All right, so my name is Olivier. I'll be moderating this panel this afternoon on the ingredients of a winning omnichannel strategy. So I'm joined today by Liana, Eva, and Romika. Thank you for agreeing to take part in this discussion. Before we start, I just wanted to set the stage a little bit because we want to make this as realistic, as tangible as possible for the topic. There's been a lot of discussion around omnichannel over the past couple of days, obviously. So maybe, and we see this a lot in event technology. It's for a lot of people, omnichannel is still a buzzword or distant vision on the horizon. So can you share with us an example of an omnichannel use case that you've seen in your organizations? Liana, do you want to start?
Sure. Well, first, before I start, I want to say, Olivier, I don't know how you did it, but I think that you're the second panel that it's only women, so congratulations on that. Huh? Yeah, for us, we've had Tiana before in the stage, who's also a part of Abbott, but for us at Abbott, Omnichannel is really all about how we make sure that we are making it easy for our doctors to really give the best care to the patient and the people that we take care of. So in some cases, we actually try to map the whole health experience and try to understand socially what is going on in the country, for example, because we only work in medicines, we only work in emerging markets. So for some of our markets, understanding what the social problems or the cultural problems are things that we need to tackle during and information that we need to give to the doctors so that they can better take care of the patients. Mm-hmm. And Tiana had actually covered previously an example that when we launched in Saudi for one of our drugs. And it was really important to understand that social environment and those biases in the market to be able to really provide the doctor with information that could help them truly get to that conversation, open that conversation better with the patient and provide really the care, which was not happening before.
Okay. Eva?
If I would summarize in one word, for me it's really being customer-centric. So it's in reality a new way of working, it's a new way of thinking, and in any kind of decision that we do have, we put the customer inside first or even asking them instead of assuming. Mm-hmm. That's the way I would summarize it. Then I have many examples, but we have many other questions, I'm sure.
Right, Romika?
Perfect, thanks, Eva. For me, omnichannel, we've been speaking about omnichannel quite a lot. Again, we are kind of far from achieving omnichannel, but we are doing a lot of connected journeys across, reaching out to the HCPs, tracking their behavior, and if we can follow up, whether it's through the rep channel or through the email channel or approved email or through our web channel as well. So it's been a part of the omnichannel experience, but now we are trying to also try and achieve a closed loop around that as well, whether we are getting the right feedback to actually track the data points as well and see whether that one trigger can lead to other multiple next best actions. Mm-hmm. And that's something that we are doing, but not for all channels yet. Mm-hmm. Still a bit of silos is there. A bit, I would say, is an understatement.
Can I double click on that then? So
sure.
It starts with the customer. You need to understand, you talked about behaviors, preferences, because obviously the more complete the picture is, the more personalized you can make the interactions and the more impact you can have. But in essence, what data do you need? I know there's probably hundreds of different data points, but in your opinion, how do you build that data picture for your HCP?
That's a very interesting question because we are trying to also create a hub of having different channels coming into one hub data point, which is not going to store all the data, but it's also going to react to the actions. Mm-hmm. And that's based on event-based triggers, connected journeys. At the same time, all the data points that we are talking about are spread across multiple platforms. And how do you create that synergy is by creating governance around it. Because as soon as we run an entire enterprise model, or say these are the global tools that you have to work with, there's always markets running Excel sheets and different types of databases which are locally run, which is often not effective, because that's when we do not have that full picture, and that's where it does not go into the ambition of omnichannel. So driving governance is first data governance across markets, having a central picture of how your data should look like, and then driving that to help the markets own the data points, and then that sort of drives the strategic side also.
Yeah.
And then the data science and all the fancy stuff that we were talking about, AI
Exactly.
and shiny stuff.
But that's where I'm going next. Liana, you obviously look after insights, and I'm curious to see if you have a cool example of going from data to insights and then to next best action.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we were talking actually in the break with a couple of colleagues, and I mean, for us, the journey has actually been about creating or putting the data right from the beginning, and sort of saying, if we are going to create a business case for that specific country, what is the data that we actually need to be able to drive it until the end? And to be able actually to put, and I think that this was discussed in the morning, of to be able to put all the people that have to give input to the journey, to put them in the table. And in order to do that, you actually also have to provide them with the data that is going to be actionable specifically for them, right? And so in some of our smaller countries, we talked, I think, yesterday about the importance of segmentation and how do you actually ideally go to that behavioral part. So in some of our smaller countries, we are not able actually to spend all the money that you need to be able to do like really specific research, right? So we start with some of the assumptions that might come from the field. And then afterwards, we deploy the journey, right? And for that part of it, and making sure that things, the way that we are assuming them, are correct, the next best action is super important. Because we might actually give some content and put some digital content in different ways to the doctor, but the doctor might not necessarily react. It doesn't mean that our assumptions at the beginning from the field were the right ones. And so we have had cases in which, because we have put the right next best action, and the field force can actually react to it and can go and meet the HCP at that given point, one, it helps us actually better segment that HCP and really include that behavioral segmentation. But second, it also helps us with the field force feeling that they are really empowered with better information. So it has been crucial for us.
And then in that case, maybe a question. So building on what you just said, it helps you provide better content to your HCPs, but how do you actually track that you're doing a good job, that it's working?
So on our side, we've done two big initiatives in parallel. One is because in order to be able to track, you need to be able to deliver, right? And we do have two sets of lagging and leading KPIs, one that we measure the change internally, and others, of course, based on performance, but also based on NPS and based on CXQ at every interaction. So we do have a feedback loop constantly, not yet in real time, because the data integration is garbage in, garbage out. But definitely that's the objective. But none of this happens if we do not have two things in parallel. One is about the contents that needs to be modularized, all tagged, all perfect, which I have yet to see a format that does it properly, but that's actually the big initiative we're putting in place, and I think we had a huge impact in the last 4 months. The other one is actually putting next best action, next best content, next best message, and next best action into place in parallel.
And so you've talked about all the data requirements that you need, and you talked about integration. That's obviously the technology that underpins all of this is quintessential. It's a big piece of the puzzle. Yeah. You get security, you get compliance, interoperability across all those different systems. You talked about governance. That's a very important point as well. What's your, maybe question for you, Romika, because you touched on governance. What's your North Star or golden principle when you think about rolling new tech across your company?
New tech is often, it's something that we always get attracted to, but we have to know what we have currently is also a lot. And how we can leverage that to the maximum is, I think, the potential that we have, and that's the synergy. We have to constantly build from a global governance to the local markets, that you have everything you need to the potential, use it to the potential, and that's with constant training, people management, bringing in leaders or champions across markets on data stewards, digital leaders, who are constantly going to be your champions. I mentioned it even yesterday, that having those champions who are in your, completely aligned with your global strategy, sort of become like the change agents across the board, across markets, to run those success stories. You need to build that with the local markets, and that sort of goes through sessions like also webinars, like we have like fast forward sessions, so that we are able to say that we have everything to the potential that we need. And of course, we do evaluate new technology. We are not shying away from new technology, what's coming out. Our technology partners have been constantly at breast with us and constantly in sync with what they are in their roadmap, taking us in the picture as well while they are discussing the roadmap of their product releases. And we are trying to optimize that. But at the same time, you don't want to move too fast. We want to fix the basics and the fundamentals before we sort of add another platform on top of all that we already have. So that's
incremental change then, one step at a time.
Indeed.
And adoption is also a recurring theme that we've heard over the
Absolutely.
past couple of days that everybody seems to be struggling with a little bit. But instead of thinking strategy and what works well, Liana, do you have a pitfall or common pitfall that you've encountered in your career for rolling out new tech? I think the things you should not do.
Well, I would say that the biggest pitfall is that tech is kind of shiny, right? And everyone likes it a little bit, talking it's the new thing, and there's always new things coming out. And I think that we have been trying to be very careful to say it is all about the business problem that we are trying to solve. It is not about the tech, right? And I think that if you really think about it, the major problem that we have is all human, right? On one hand, we are trying to solve the problem for a patient, and that's common across the value chain, right? And so it is not about the tech, it is about how tech actually will help us provide better information and better care for the patients. On the other hand, we know that as an industry, we are pretty siloed. And so we need to use tech to be able to break those silos and not the other way around, right? Sometimes tech actually creates more silos. So we need to use it to collaborate and to make sure that we break those silos. And last, we also need to use it for that big change in mindset, right? And so that comes with, we need to make sure that data is available for every single part of the company, that they can take action out of it, that they know how their role is actually impacting the persons or the people that we serve, right, the patient, so that you really create a circle. And so these are the areas in which you should use technology. And it's a little bit like Romika was saying, it's not a one-size-fits-all, right? You really actually need to make sure that you're using the right technology, not as a shiny object, but actually as to solve that specific problem, I think.
Okay. And in that case, maybe for you, Eva, if we think about all different pieces that need to come together for Omnichannel to work, again, just thinking with the technology hat on, what's for you the starting point of all this? Where does it start?
So even before jumping into that, one of the pitfalls that I wanted to add as well is to have the assumption of the arrogance that we can build in-house as well. There's always this tendency that, but because I want to own it and we're so good that we're trying to do it. And then it takes 3-4 years, much more expensive. And when we have it into place, then it's obsolete. So sometimes it's really like stepping back and accepting, hey, we're not the experts, we're not a software company, we're not a CRM company, and just partner with the best, because then it's also easy to plug in and plug out. But that's one of the main pitfalls that I've observed in the last few years. Regarding where do we start, it's actually not by the tech. I fully agree with Romika
Good
and,
answer,
and Liana
yeah.
is starting with the vision and the business problem we're trying to solve. And from the moment we do have the vision that is aligned, then creating really programs where we bring the people along, so then we can build the user stories that are really necessary. And then based on those user stories, do we have gaps in technology? Do we have everything that we need? And then based on gaps, then find externally partners that can meet that gaps.
Yeah,
But
and
it's-
I like the point from Liana as well, to start from the problem and then see
Yeah,
if
from the
there's tech
business
that can
problem,
address your
yeah.
problem rather than starting with the tech and then
It's
figuring
never
out.
a good solution.
Absolutely.
But then I remember a couple of sessions where we talked about adoptions, and as great as your data may be, as great as the insights you might be generating and the tech you might have, in the end there is a bottleneck. It is making sure that you get those insights to the right teams
Yeah.
at the right time, and that they actually are empowered to use it. And you just touched on this a minute ago, but what's the best way to, first of all, disperse the insights to the right channels, to the right teams, and then to get them to actually use it?
I mean, as I said, I don't think that there's a one solution fits all, right? For us, and this is part of why I am here, right?
No,
I
for
am the
you,
head
I
of
want to
insights,
hear
and
from
this
you.
is why I'm here, right? Tiana and I work actually hand in hand, and we actually define every business process from the beginning to the end. And from the beginning, there's the analytics, the data part, and the insight part. And we know that we need to deliver not only in the business case of what we are going to do with the doctors, but we know that we need to deliver in terms of providing that information. If we are not able to do it, and if we are not able to give that information to all the different parts of the organization, we know that it is something that is not going to work. This is really the only way in which we can actually make sure that everyone that is involved can actually become sort of a sponsor of the programs that you're doing, right?
And
They need to feel part of it from the beginning in terms of the problem. You need to be able to provide them something of value, and then they have to be able to see what the result is and action upon it. So there's no easy way. It's a lot of hard work, but there's also another solution, I think.
And something else that I've seen in the past couple of years in speaking to customers, we always have two different dimensions, sometimes multiple different dimensions of global, local, therapeutical area, and all of which actually embrace a different omnichannel strategy. And how do we actually, and that's a question for the both of you, how do you actually get a single voice that comes out of your company, and that an HCP doesn't actually get bombarded from different contradicting messages from different parts of the company? What does it mean in terms of org structure and in terms of teams, and how you set yourselves up around this?
Yeah.
Do you want to? Oh, sure. So it's again to do with people, right? So organizationally, we are trying to streamline the way we approach customers. We have, of course, the MSLs, we have the reps, we have the brand teams, local, regional, all kinds of content coming bombarded. The same HCP is probably getting targeted 4 or 5 times in
By
our
the same company.
Yeah, and the messaging is also different. It was never aligned because everybody has their own objectives, goals to meet, and KPIs to address. Now we are looking at it a little more customer-centric. So what does the customer need? One voice. So we are trying to approach it the way we see that one Spock should be there, one voice should go, rather than having 5 channels of voices. There should be one singular voice going in. And the organization is also trying to build, and we are slowly bringing that change for market. It's not easy because it sort of means that all your archaic processes and functions are also tried to be streamlined. Focus areas change. Okay, now we are going to only talk about, if you want to try to only target neurologists, there's going to be only one targeted streamlined approach. There'll not be 5 target reps going in terms of there's an OTC rep going, or there is an MSL going, and then so that sort of creates a synergy, but then that becomes a customer-centric focus. And that's a big change, and it leads to a lot of restructuring within and it takes time. It does take time. We've tried it with 2 big markets now, and it's only a big starting point to sort of go in and bring about that change towards customer centricity.
Thank you very much. I think we're right on time, and I know from Switzerland we like to finish on time, so thank you very much.
And we have some
for your-
planes waiting.
Yes, that too.
All right.
Thank you,
Thank
Olivier.
you very much to the
Thank
three of
you.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.